cervical, but in some cases, this artery gives off 3 branches, right? But as I have mentioned here, these are the 3 branches. So let me say that this thyrocervical trunk gives off 3 further branches, right? The first branch which arises from this thyrocervical artery is this one. Look carefully, this one. And this artery goes and supplies blood to the thyroid gland inferiorly. That's why we say that, look here, thyro means thyroid gland. So the first branch which arises from this thyrocervical trunk, that will be the inferior thyroidal artery, right? Let me mention it, let me write it with blue color. Inferior thyroidal artery, right? This is the branch of thyrocervical trunk, right? The second branch which arises from this, this trunk, this is cervical trunk, this one, this is the second trunk. This is the second artery which arises from this trunk, and this second artery is called the transverse cervical artery, right? This is the transverse cervical artery. Right, the transverse cervical artery. And this third branch which arises from this trunk, this is called the suprascapular artery, right? Suprascapular artery. Right, we are done with this first part. The first part bears off and gives off 3 branches. These are vertebral artery, you can see here, vertebral artery. Then there is thyrocervical trunk, this one, and then there is internal thoracic artery, which is coming down and supplies blood to the intercostal spaces anteriorly in the thoracic cavity. Right, friends, these were the branches of the first part of this artery. Now move forward to the second part of this artery. Let me write here second part. Right? So this second part of this artery, this left subclavian artery, right subclavian artery, it is, as you can see here, this is the scalene muscle, right? So this second part of this muscle, this artery is posterior to this anterior scalene muscle, right? The first part was medial, you can see here, and the second part is posterior. So let me write here, the second part lies posterior to anterior scalene muscle. Okay, we are done with it. This was the part of the second part of this artery. Where does it located? It is located posterior to the anterior scalene muscle. And what are the branches of this second part? Right. So the second part of this artery, right? This it gives off this trunk, right? It gives off this trunk as it lies posterior to the anterior scalene muscle. So it gives off costocervical trunk, right? So this trunk is called the costocervical trunk. Very good. So the branches are the costocervical trunk. Costo means costal bones, right? And cervical means cervical region. So this artery will give off further 2 branches. As you can see here, I have mentioned, dear friends, I have mentioned here that this costocervical trunk will give off further 2 branches. The first one will be superior cervical artery, right? Superior cervical artery. And the second one will be the deep internal thoracic artery, right? Deep internal thoracic artery. So the branches of this, well, we can say here, the costocervical trunk, it will give off 2 branches, the superior cervical, okay, and then there will be, okay, let me write here, artery, and then will be deep internal thoracic, deep internal thoracic artery. Okay, these were the branches of this costocervical trunk. This was the trunk which arises from the second part of this artery, the subclavian artery. Now let me move further and discuss about the third part, the branches of the third part of this artery. Okay, we are done with it. Third part. The third part of this artery, as you can see here, this part, it lies lateral to the anterior scalene muscle, right? So it lies lateral to anterior scalene muscle, right? And it gives off a branch in this branch, and this branch is called the dorsal scapular artery, right? This branch is called the, what is the branch of the third part? That is the dorsal scapular artery. Right, friends. So these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So look carefully. There are two trunks. As you can see here, I have mentioned trunk and I have mentioned here another trunk. So how to learn, how to remember these branches? There are two trunks and three arteries. Look, vertebral artery, internal thoracic artery, the dorsal scapular artery. There are three arteries and two trunks. The first trunk, thyrocervical trunk. The second one is costocervical trunk. Right, friends? These were the branches of the subclavian artery. Either it is on the right side or on the left side of the body. Right? If it moves further forward, then from this point, it becomes the auxiliary artery. We will see the branches of that auxiliary artery and the diagram of that auxiliary artery in the next lecture, and we will move forward and record all about the blood supply and branches of the arteries in the upper limbs, right? So this was about the subclavian artery, a little bit, its details, and these are the parts. Subclavian artery is divided into three parts, the first part, the second part, and the third part. The first part gives off vertebral artery, thyrocervical trunk, and the internal thoracic artery, and the second part gives off costocervical trunk, which gives blood to the superior cervical region, right? Superior cervical artery, and the deep internal thoracic artery, right? And the third part gives off the dorsal scapular artery. So friends, this was about the subclavian artery. See you in the next lecture about the branches of axillary artery. Be with us. And if you like our lectures, please write in comment section to me. And please, friends, it's a humble request that if you haven't subscribed our channel, please subscribe and share the lectures with your friends too. Thank you so much.